especially in this world now too, where you need as many players as possible, right? I don't know how the NFL is going to avoid the Marlins situation. I'm talking not just one team. I'm talking numerous teams because you got a lot of dudes on that roster. Right? Everybody just assumes, and they know probably 10 players on each roster. There's another at least 43 on there that you have never heard of that maybe got signed on Thursday. There's guys that get signed on Thursday. I had a guy get signed on Saturday, and he was my gunner on Sunday, and I didn't even know his name. I had to call him by a number. It was a terrible number, like, hey, 46 or something like that. Like, hey, man, I'm so sorry. Like, hey, I'm coming to you. Okay. Didn't even know the guy's name. And by the way, by Monday, he was gone because another guy, like, that is, you have no idea what you're bringing in, who's bringing in. It is going to be.
Like if Clowney goes to work out for somebody or Dez, do you have to pass 3 tests? Do you have to show 3 negative tests before you even work out? How does it work?
Yeah, is a workout now 5 days long because you have to wait there?
And then if they sign you, do you have to hang out for 8 days before they let you in the facility?
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, it's going to happen. They will ford the river like Oregon Trail.
Mm-hmm.
They will go for this thing. They will try to make it happen, and I'm very excited for it. But it's going to be interesting watching them juggle it because if you do remember, about a month and a half ago, Foch came out and said nothing will be able to happen without a bubble. The NFL won't be able to happen. And then the NFL medicals person was like, hey, Foch, go throw a terrible opening pitch. Okay, we'll take care of this. I'm excited to see how they're planning on doing that.
Ice that elbow.
Hey, that's one of the worst opening pitches of all time. Fouch had such a wild quarantine. I mean, a real roller coaster of a quarantine.
In the beginning, too.
Didn't even know he existed, by the way. Didn't even know he existed. And then I found out, saw him work, saw him get yelled at by the NFL, saw him throw a bad opening pitch. Now he's back, though. I think he's on the road to recovery. 5 seconds until hour 1 ends on radio. This is the Pat McAfee Show. I'm very fucking intrigued to see how the NFL does this, by the way. College UNC just suspended all athletics at UNC until 5 p.m. today because of a COVID spike. Until 5 p.m.
5
today.
p.m.
Yeah, it's like a storm. Like a storm's coming through. Okay, I want to let everybody know there's a COVID severe COVID warning until 5 p.m. today.
You know how the football practices move to 6.
Oh, 5:15 probably. Yeah. Oh, by the way, how many minutes do we need to put on the pads? About 15 minutes. Okay, practice now at 5:15. Good luck out there. Mac Brown's doing it. The college stuff, Kevin Warren, we'll talk about this in the second hour. And we'll talk Tom Pelissaro as well, NFL Network insider, reporter, guy who had a great quarantine. There's a guy that had a great quarantine for the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk to him about the plans that the NFL has for when these positive cases inevitably pop up, which are going to happen. Will they be like the PGA and say we got to keep going? Will it be like the MLB, keep going? Or the NFL is going to be like we got to suspend games? I mean, there's a lot to figure out. And I assume it's all flying by the seat of their pants because they can't predict what's going to happen next. But you got to hope that the guy or the lady making the decision are very good at making very quick, pretty vital decisions for $1 billion operation. Are you looking at this? Because we watch Hard Knocks, and that's really the only inside peek that I get inside a building now. I watch Hard Knocks I think it's a wide receiver coach was talking to the Zoom call, which was all the players, because Seth Ryan, Rex's kid, got a false positive or whatever, and he gave an entire speech about how I have to prepare everybody in this Zoom call to play. Like, everybody has to be ready to play, especially with this COVID, because people are going to get sent out. He said, you guys might have a new position coach because I might get COVID at some point in this thing. How are you preparing for that roster-wise? You just have a list of a bunch of you have to scout a bunch of humans and just be ready to pick and place them?
So this Connexon device is very important. It's tracing, it's contact tracing, our proximity to other people. And if you're around, a group for over 15 minutes at a time, it becomes an issue if somebody tests positive because they're going to be knocked out. So the way we've explained it, Frank and I, to our staff, both coaches and our scouts, is look, every guy on the team's important, and you can't. Everybody, even your practice squad players that are usually a little more developmental, you've got to think of them as starters because there's a chance during the season they're going to come into play. Now the good news for us is that's usually where our first pull is from. When we're bringing players in, we've been very active on our practice squad, something we've really sold to players. And we've had guys come from there. So, but it's even more important this year. We have got to be able to, those 16 players have to be treated just like they're playing on Sunday each and every week, because you just don't know. And then we've got to have an emergency list ready to go. That's long and deep. And, our scouts will work on that.
What's the conversation about like accountability? Because we saw in that first Hard Knocks, the Spanos family, father son there, who's loved in San Diego, but I got a chance to watch them on Hard Knocks talk to Chris Harris Jr. about how like, hey, we're going to need you guys to hold each other accountable and this whole bubble like thing. How has that messaging been sent from the team? And are you guys just expecting people to do that? And how do you see that going with all 100% reality of the humans, 21 to 25-year-old guys? Like, it's going to be a very tough chore, I think.
No, it's going to be very difficult. And our team knows it, not just our team, our staff.
Yeah.
I got 5 kids. When I go home, I got 5 children and I can't ask them to stop living. I ask them to be careful. And I'm careful around them. Look, we're not going to focus on the problem. Frank made a great point of this. We're going to address the problem at the start of camp. And like we both told the locker room, if you want to win and if you want to go where you want to go, it's going to take some accountability on each one of you. And you've got to hold each other accountable. And they know, Pat, you've been in that locker room. They know the guys that are doing what needs to be done. They know the guys that are you can bullshit the media, you can bullshit the fans, but you cannot bullshit the locker room.
Bingo.
And they know. So there's got to be a degree of accountability being held within that locker room for it to be able to be successful. And it doesn't mean we won't have a slip up. And it doesn't mean so. And I don't want somebody, if they do get it, but they've got to be honest. They can't come in the building. They've got to be honest. And we got to make sure we continue testing and doing the protocols that the league has asked us to do.
The NFL, we had Chris Ballard on with us in the first hour, and he talked about how they have to treat basically everybody on the team as starters now. That's just how it's going to be, and they assume more and more is going to happen. Is there a plan in place for the NFL if a Marlins-like outbreak happens? Are they going to postpone games? Because you can't really shorten games in the NFL. You can't postpone games too much because what are guys going to do, sit out? Like, is there a plan in place for that? Have you heard any conversation on how they're going to figure that out?
Well, first of all, when it comes to, changing a venue or cancellation, postponement, whatever, they're putting together kind of like a shadow competition committee. They're calling it a competition advisory panel that will talk to the commissioner in season. Because currently the actual competition committee is active NFL executives and coaches and GMs who their interests are going to be different based on what game it is, what happens, things like what happens if you've got to seed the playoffs. And some teams have played more divisional games than others. How do you do that? Who wins the division if teams end up playing an equal number of games? What they're doing is they're getting former GMs, former head coaches, former players now to form this other advisory panel that will sort out some of these situations as they come up. But you also have to know the NFL has made a bunch of different changes to try to have more roster flexibility within the season. The expanded practice squads, going to 16 guys. That's one of them. Unlimited injured reserve, not just the reserve COVID-19 list, but unlimited IR. You have a high ankle sprain that in the past, that's 4 to 6 weeks. You'd have to make that decision. Okay, do we put the guy on IR end his season, or do we keep him up and now we're down a guy for 4 to 6 weeks? Well, now you can come back from IR within 3 weeks. There is no limit on the number of guys you can come back. In other words, they want, and the competition committee signed off on this, teams to have as much access as possible to guys who know their scheme, that they have actually trained. So if you do have an outbreak within a team, if there are ways that you have enough guys there, and if you don't have concern about other infections or a spread within a team, spread between teams, you're going to, when possible, find ways to play.
What about so it's just going to be field a team however you can field a team if something goes down. That's just going to have to be
in essence. If there's a situation where 25 guys somehow all have COVID-19, now you've got a problem, especially because, okay, did those tests happen at the beginning of the week where you can retest guys and get them into protocols, figure out who's asymptomatic, who's symptomatic, or did they happen on Friday morning before a Sunday game? Those are all things they're still working out. The in-season testing cadence has not actually been finalized yet. That's going to be one of the big questions. Things like the Matthew Stafford situation where Stafford had one positive test amidst a bunch of negative tests. Then now the Lions come out and say that was a false positive. How they're working through that. That's evolving here where now you can come back, you have 2 more negative tests, you can return to the team. Here's what I know right now. The positivity rate on those COVID-19 tests is ridiculously low. We're talking a fraction of 1% that are positive tests right now. And based on some of the activations today, there have been 110 guys league-wide put on the reserve COVID-19 list. As of this moment, there are 6 guys left on the list.
Let's
That's
go.
it. It's early.
Go,
It's
guys.
early, but those are really good signs that all the protocols, not just the testing, but the contact tracing, the education, the behavioral emphasis, and the social distancing in the buildings, all that stuff you'd say at this moment seems to be working.